The church bells rang like distant echoes of a dream, soft and trembling, as Emily Hart stood at the altar in her delicate lace gown, her hands shaking slightly inside the silk gloves. All she could hear was her own heartbeat pounding beneath the layers of satin. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Today she was marrying Thomas, good, predictable, perfectly suitable Thomas. Guests filled the pews, smiling politely, bouquets in hand, unaware of the storm brewing behind Emily's uneasy smile. She felt the weight of something she could not name, a strange heaviness pressing down on her chest. The priest opened his book. Thomas took her hand, but before a single vow could be spoken, the church doors burst open with a violent thunder that silenced every whisper in the room. A group of masked men marched down the aisle with terrifying precision, their boots echoing against the marble floor. Panic spread instantly. Women screamed, men leapt to their feet. The masked men didn't speak, they only pointed toward Emily. Thomas tried to intervene, but he was shoved aside effortlessly, his voice swallowed by chaos. Emily felt strong arms grab her before she could comprehend what was happening. Her veil tore, her bouquet scattered, she was dragged out of her own wedding as if she were a criminal being taken away for judgment. The world outside was a blur of sunlight and black SUVs waiting with engines running. She tried to scream, but a rough hand covered her mouth, muffling her cries. She fought, but the grip was unyielding. Within seconds, she was thrown inside one of the vehicles, the door slamming shut behind her. Her heart hammered violently, tears spilling down her cheeks as the car sped away from the church, from Thomas, from the life she knew. All she saw through the tinted window was the white ribbons fluttering in the wind, the remnants of a wedding that died before it ever began. After minutes that felt like hours, the SUV stopped. The door opened, and she was dragged into a mansion, a breathtaking fortress of glass and marble, perched on a hill that overlooked an endless stretch of ocean. Everything was luxurious, silent, intimidating. She was shoved into a grand office and the men vanished behind her, leaving her shaking and alone. The room was dim, lit only by soft golden lamps reflecting off the crystal walls. Emily clutched her torn dress, breath trembling. And then she heard footsteps, slow, steady, controlled. A shadow moved behind the massive desk. When the figure stepped into the light, Emily's breath caught. Her knees nearly buckled. She knew that face. Everyone did. Alexander Blackwood, billionaire, business tycoon, the youngest CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. A man so powerful people feared even speaking his name out of context. And now he stood before her, his cold blue eyes locked onto hers as though he had been waiting for this moment for centuries. Why did you do this? She whispered, voice wobbling. Alexander didn't answer immediately. He walked closer, his stare unwavering, until he was standing only inches from her. You were about to marry the wrong man, he said with chilling calm. Emily shook her head in disbelief. You kidnapped me from my own wedding. This is insane. Alexander's jaw tensed. Insane, he repeated quietly. Emily, you have no idea how long I've waited for you to know the truth. Her breath stilled. There was something in his voice, something heavy, ancient, almost painful. What truth? She whispered. Alexander's fingers grazed the edge of her torn veil, lifting it gently. His touch was cold, electric. That you were never meant to belong to him, he murmured. You've always belonged to me. Emily stumbled backward, heart pounding, shock flooding her veins. She didn't know whether to scream or demand answers, but the one thing she knew was that her life had just changed forever, and there was no going back. To those watching, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for the next chapter. This story is only just B. Emily stared at Alexander, her breaths quick and uneven, her entire world collapsing in on itself. The office felt colder now, the walls closing in as she struggled to understand the madness unfolding before her. She wrapped her arms around herself, her torn wedding gown a painful reminder of the life she had been stolen from. I don't belong to you, she whispered, her voice cracking. You can't just take me, Alexander. You can't decide my life for me. Alexander remained still, his eyes darkening just enough to reveal something dangerous beneath his collected exterior. I didn't decide your life, he said quietly. I protected it. Protected. Emily laughed bitterly. By kidnapping me. Instead of reacting with anger, Alexander turned away and walked toward a locked cabinet behind his desk. He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table. You're going to look at this, he said firmly. And then you'll understand why I had no choice. Emily hesitated, then with trembling hands, she opened it. Her eyes widened in horror. Inside the folder were photographs, dozens of them, of Thomas. But these were not the images of the gentleman she had been preparing to marry. No, these showed Thomas meeting with men she didn't recognize, exchanging envelopes, shaking hands in dim alleyways. Some photos showed weapons on the table. Others showed stacks of money. Emily could barely breathe. "No, this is fake," she said weakly. "Someone edited these." Alexander didn't respond. He only pulled out a USB drive and inserted it into the computer. A video played. In it, Thomas sat in a bar, talking to a man whose face was blurred. "The girl is naive," Thomas said. "Once I marry her, her inheritance becomes accessible. That's all we need. She'll never know." Emily felt the floor vanish beneath her. Her knees buckled, and she sank into a chair, shaking uncontrollably. Tears blurred her vision as Thomas's voice continued, each word slicing her like a knife. Alexander finally spoke, his voice softer now. "I've been watching him for months. Your father trusted me before he died, Emily. He asked me to look after you, to make sure no one ever used you the way people tried to use him." Emily looked up slowly. "My father, what?" "He knew Thomas wasn't who he pretended to be," Alexander said. "But he didn't live long enough to prove it. So I took the responsibility. I vowed to protect you, even if you hated me for it." Emily wiped at her tears, her heart torn between betrayal and disbelief. She had thought Thomas was her safe choice, her calm after a lifetime of loss. Instead, he had been a storm waiting to destroy everything. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" she whispered. Alexander stepped closer, his voice almost pained. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was interfering?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't know the truth anymore, not about Thomas, not about herself, and certainly not about Alexander. He crouched in front of her, lifting her